If you're trying to emulate an old video or VHS look, the first thing to do is to set your resolution and aspect ratio to an authentic setting. In this case, I'm more or less trying to emulate VHS, and because high-definition VHS doesn't exist, there's no point in rendering all of those extra HD pixels. So I'm going to set the resolution to a mere 640 by 480, which, although it is a higher resolution than VHS, it will match the authentic 4:3 aspect ratio of VHS, and will be degrading the render later, so having a little extra resolution is fine. Here are the compositing nodes for this scene. Don't worry, this looks more complex than it really is. Let me go through what's going on here. First off, these nodes here are doing effects that I've covered in previous compositing tutorials, so I won't be covering them in detail here. I'll put links to my previous compositing videos in the description if you want to check out how to do these effects. So what are they? Well, from left to right, we have denoising, then lens dispersion. This group here is lens dirt, and this group is Vhs Noise, which basically composites the same as film grain, but I'll come back to that later in this video. So all of those aside, we're left with these groups here. This first group adds the cross lens flare effect. Now, it is possible to achieve similar results by just using the glare node, but I find that that method lacks control. What I've done here is simply taken the main image output, blurred it horizontally with the blur node, darkened it down so we mostly just get the lights, then composited it over the clean image output with a mix node set to add. The same is then done with the other axis. To elaborate on this further, as you can see here, this blur node is blurred 35% on the x-axis, and this one is 35% on the y. Here I've used the Gaussian blur mode, but in this case the fast Gaussian option would work just as well. Be sure to check the relative box and enable X or Y aspect correction. Whichever one you choose, make sure it's the same on the other node as well. The Rgb Curves node is super easy to use in this case. Just drop it in, click the center, and drag the point down and to the right until it looks right for your scene. The mix node should be set to add, and the FAC will probably have to be reduced from the default value or your effect will be really bright. Also, make sure that the outputs from the curves nodes are going into the bottom inputs of the mix shaders. The next thing to do is super simple, but it's not something you'd normally think about in regards to 3D rendering, and that is blurring and sharpening. Here, I've added a series of sharpen and soften effects to get just the right look for my scene, because just one or two didn't do the trick. These effects can be found within the filter node, so just add some filter nodes and set some of them to sharpen and some of them to soften and tweak the values. The amount you need will depend on your scene resolution. Higher resolution will require more blur and more sharpening to achieve the same look. It's also a good idea to denoise your render before adding sharpness, so you're not sharpening your render noise. Moving on, this group of nodes starts off with the Separate RGBA node. This allows you to independently alter the color channels. Doing this is very useful when trying to recreate the VHS look because old VHS tapes often suffer from color channel separation. In this case, I used another filter node to soften the red channel, a transform node to shift the green channel over a little bit, and yet another filter node to sharpen the blue channel. These particular effects can be swapped out for whatever you'd like. The goal is simply to distort and degrade the image in a VHS kind of way. The channels are then combined again with the Combine RGBA node. I covered adding film grain to your render in my previous video. And similarly, one of the things that you can do to make your renders look like old video is by adding Vhs Noise. The Vhs Noise composites exactly the same as the film grain, except instead of setting the mix color node to overlay, set it to screen instead. You can find a free clip of Vhs Noise at this site here. Link in the description. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed learning these techniques and want to learn more about Blender, check out my other videos and consider subscribing for more videos in the future.